Hello and welcome to our daily sketching routine. It is Thursday, December 19th, 2024, and today's topic will be called From Sketch to Illustration. And before we begin, welcome back if you're returning, welcome if you're new. I sketch and post every day, and I use timers. I'm going to use a 10-minute timer to stay focused and build a sketching habit. That's how this channel started, and I like to continue doing that. It's still helpful. So if you just want to use these videos as a sketching companion to build a sketching habit, then feel free to do that, or just ideas to just do whatever sketch you want to do. Or I've been doing more of kind of like mini series. So yeah, in this one I'll post, I think there's 3 other ones. There's at least 2, I think there's 3 of them, videos that kind of goes along like the process and shows more detail if you want, but you can also just watch this one video. And yeah, the way I do it is you can kind of just skip around and stuff. So let me get this situated. So yeah, I started a 10-minute timer, by the way, and I might do 30 minutes on this one. I gotta take my time with it. That's one of the main things. But let's just talk about how to take like a sketch. It started off as a thumbnail sketch, so yeah, in the other videos there's like, it's just basically the steps that I took. And then this isn't really a thumbnail. This is more like a sketch or a layout sketch, or like a preliminary sketch. And I just wanted to go with this because it had it would make for a good illustration, just because it has like a setting and a scene and a story to it. So yeah, I just thought, okay, let me develop this. And the subject matter is a little different. I mean, I haven't really drawn anything like this. I mean, I've drawn fantasy type stuff, but not specifically like a giant snake and stuff. So yeah, I'm gonna work on that. I won't finish it in this video, but I did want to talk about some adjustments I'm gonna make. So what I did was I scanned this in, and there's just different ways to approach it, and I'll kind of just discuss like that kind of thing. This isn't like the typical way that I would do it, but it's similar, because I've mentioned how when I was doing freelance, I would have done this. I might have done this part and then scan it in and then worked on it on the computer, or I would have just sketched this on the computer. In this case, I just enlarged it and printed it out and made it pretty light, like 20% opacity kind of thing, and just so I can make adjustments. Now, there's a lot kind of reasons that I did that. Like, one is just because I'm doing more traditional art, and then, to finish it off, I might put it on the computer again. So there's just like a lot of, I'm experimenting, in other words. So there's a lot of like different thoughts that I have. But I want to, and plus I've been doing a lot more traditional art, so I kind of want to see like what I come up with this one, because it is fun and I do like the look of it. So yeah, it'll be a lot of content for videos. So one thing that I did like, so that's the other thing I kind of wanted to talk about, because someone was and it's just something that comes up, especially with the kinds of videos that I do, like how to take the thumbnails, because I do this a lot, like I sketch a lot, and develop it into a more finished drawing or an illustration or something, and like a finished piece. And so that's kind of what that was about, because one way to do it is to just scan it in and print it out. There's so many different methods, and I've done all kinds of like different methods. Part of that is because when I look at the sketch here, I like a lot of it. I like most of it. And so if I don't have to redraw it, I'm not going to redraw it. I mean, I'm going to be refining it and changing some stuff. For example, like the kind of the anatomy of it. But the other way is, if I were going to redraw it, like not scan it and print it out like this, I would go in kind of a very different direction. So for example, I like the composition, and I like a lot of what's going on here. And so let's say I was going to paint like kind of a big canvas, or like a very different medium, for example. Or even if I were going to do it on the computer and just experiment, or just use like the digital stuff, I would just go kind of in a different route. And so that way I'm not necessarily redrawing it line like by line. If I'm going to keep it really similar, I would rather have I'd rather do it this way, where I just print it out, and if I wanted to lightbox it, I could, or if I were to grid it, I could do it that way. But like, if it's going to look very, very similar, I'd prefer not to redraw it, is kind of what I'm getting at, because a lot of the goodness and like the energy and stuff is in there. And that was kind of what some of the comments were saying. Like, how do you keep the energy, the spontaneity of the sketch? And that this is one way of doing it, is kind of what I'm getting at. If I were doing it very different, then yeah, I could go in a different direction and then just use this as like a guide. If I wanted to look a lot like it, then there's no reason to redraw it, because you can adjust it on the computer and stuff. So yeah, hopefully that kind of makes sense. I'll talk about it some more, because in this step because I did it on a bigger size, like letter size, and I'm still not going to, it's like, so the overall composition and the shapes and stuff is coming from here because I scanned it in, and I like that because I like the spontaneity of the sketch. But the approach would be different. Again, even the approach of the final illustration is different. And so it's a different mindset, and it's a different just approach to it. Versus, because that's why this looks good, is because of the spontaneity of it. Because it started off as a thumbnail and I just sketched it. And there's a lot to be said for all of that, like the whole process. And that's why the other videos go into more detail about it. But we're gonna use this as like our outline, our guide. So we kind of did all the preliminary stuff, like the sketching and doodling and thumbnails, and then use reference and life and imagination, like life drawing and stuff, or reference. I didn't have a live snake. And throughout the whole process, we kept in mind like the steps, the sketching, shading, and the detail, and then like final detail. And then but just speaking of like the study aspect of it, like I was watching some snake documentaries, and they're really interesting, first of all. And yeah, I don't know like a ton about snakes. They're pretty fascinating. I mean, any like animals are fascinating, but yeah, I've never done like a really detailed illustration of a snake, let alone a giant one. And I was thinking how like there's some things I would adjust to make it look more anatomically correct, like a snake. But then I also kind of like some of the kind of the mythicalness of some of the aspects of it, because it is like a fantasy creature. So it's kind of good to have this also as kind of the to kind of keep like the feel of it, to not go too far away from it. And so I'll talk about that more as I work on this one. So let's go ahead and do that. And we got about 10 seconds left in this 10 minutes. So for this piece, so that's 10 minutes, I'll start another 10-minute timer. And yeah, I mean, I might not make a ton of progress in this video. I mean, I'll make progress, but one thing is, once you get here, you definitely don't want to rush, because when you're thumbnailing and stuff and sketching, yeah, like that's when you sort of go kind of crazy and be spontaneous about stuff, because that's how you come up with sort of the happy accidents, as they say, or as Bob Ross says. But here you want to be pretty methodical. And all of the preliminary stuff was to help you on this stage so that you can get to the final finished piece. So I just printed it out on like good quality printer paper. Again, this is kind of a experiment, and basically it'll be like mixed media. I'm going to approach it kind of monochromatically, and I'm going to use this light Sharpie marker, light color, and I'm going to use like the brown, because part of it is I don't want to run out of, because usually I would use like the gray, but I don't want to run out of the colors. So yeah, it just comes in like different sets of colors. And one, I like the look of this. It's pretty fun to use, and like markers, for example, and pens and stuff. And it does help me with just kind of color theory, and then I can always take it into the computer and like do more, because I want to do more of that kind of stuff. I haven't really done a ton of digital stuff on the channel, but like I have in my other work. But yeah, so I'm going to do that. And then it's kind of the same thing with these color pens, because there's several of them, and part of this is to use these colors so that I don't use up all like the gray and the black and stuff. But also the color, I'm going to just go with kind of this color scheme, sort of a brown. But I liked the results I was getting with some of the other color stuff that I was posting a few days ago. Alright, so let's get started. So one thing is that I wanted to kind of adjust. I'm going to start to define, and just use this as kind of a like the layout, and sort of define the composition. So to begin with, I'm going to go ahead and yeah, I'm just going to be methodical about this and not rush is the main thing. And I think sometimes that could be helpful for the viewer. So I'm just going to start with the border. That's pretty useful. And it's a little difficult with the camera in the way, but that's alright. So doing a piece like this, like a finished kind of piece, is really helpful. It is a different approach. Okay. So with that out of the way, are we in the camera? Yeah, definitely take your time. You might make a mistake, and that's so all of the preliminary artwork, which was what yesterday was about, was to have a really good foundation for this part, but you can't be worried about messing up. But you also need to know sort of if you are messing up or not. And so that's what the preliminary, it's the blueprint. And so you know, like you want to fix a lot of your problems or answer a lot of the questions that you have in the preliminary stage. And then when you get to this stage, it's really about how can you make it look finished and really good while still keeping that foundation, the blueprint of it. And so to begin with, I'm just going to use like the light color marker and begin to define these shapes, because by the end of it, we're going to cover all of this. I don't know how many videos I'll make of this. I might, we'll see, but let's just take it a step at a time. So to begin with, you want to start just kind of getting into it and be loose, but stick to the, like, what is good about like the sketch. So part of this is I'm just wanting to get going. I want to like get started, and keep a loose grip to begin with. And a lot of this obviously depends on the medium that you're using. So there's that. And since I'm using this, and I just got this from some of the other videos that I had been doing with markers and stuff, and I was pretty happy with the results. So like I was saying, I was watching, there's this one video about, I mean, there's a lot of videos about snakes, and there was one that was really great from the BBC where this iguana was escaping. So if you want to search for that, from a bunch of snakes. And I liked the look of it. I mean, the video was great, and then yeah, it was very dramatic. But I liked the color scheme and stuff. So they were kind of brown, like different shades of brown. So I'm not worried about detail right now. What I'm wanting to do is, because like I was saying, eventually all of the sketch is going to be covered up, but I still want to keep the like the feel of it. And one thing I noticed was that kind of like this, the way I have like the snake is a little not that realistic, but then again, it is mythical, so I kind of like that too. I kind of want it to look a little fantasy like. So this is just to get, because all of this will be covered up anyway, and so you want to pick a color that's not that you can cover up again with a darker color. But some of this will shine through, which I like that effect. So yeah, a lot of the kind of the characterization and the just like the feel can come from the sketch. And I'm just gonna also use the gray of that printout. Like that can also help too, because there's some good detail there. So that's what I would do, or that's what I'm gonna do, or that's what I'm doing. So just to kind of start off with, I'll do that, and then these are like rocks back here kind of thing. But you have to find a way to get into it, and that's why the preliminary artwork is important. It helps you to get into this part. It's going to look very different, and you'll notice that. So the stage that we're working on right now is like, it's sketching, but like notice that although it's sketching, there's a lot more detail because we established the detail in the preliminary artwork. And so it's still sketching though, but we have a blueprint. So yeah, I'm just gonna go with the idea of like it sort of in these rocks, because I got that idea from the snake documentary. And the other good thing is that the sketch already had a lot of some of the value scheme, sort of where the darks will be. One thing that I did like, so that's 10 minutes. I'll start another one and might not be able to get too much further than this part. One thing that I did like in some of the other videos about markers and stuff, like the portraits that I did, I guess from last week, is it's good to leave some kind of map out like where the highlights will be. So basically where the white of the paper, it's kind of good to, for this technique anyway, it's good to sort of map that out. It might not be a bad idea to kind of just map it out, like I said, like kind of circle it a little bit where it would be. Like, it helps. Because most of this will be colored by, or covered by like some kind of color eventually. But like the scales and stuff, those are, the white of the paper will make it look more scale-like and imply a lot of that texture. So for the snake, that looks pretty good for now. And then for the, I'll zoom into this part. So for the figure, a lot of it, so I'll work on this again. I won't make this video too long. I mean, 30 minutes is long, obviously, but not in the sense of an illustration. It's gonna take time to do a finished illustration, but if you are methodical about it, it really doesn't take that much time. And to get a really good picture, whether it's digital or whether even with like AI images, which I've done, I've played around with it to see, and also like the argument of, oh, well, it takes time to do this and that. Like, yeah, exactly. And I don't think the result is better or superior or anything. But with that said, I was working on, I forgot I was zoomed in. So one thing is that you want to keep the energy. There's going to be a tendency to deviate from like the energy of the sketch. So it's good to keep it loose like this, knowing that all of this will be, there's going to be layers to it. But the main thing on this is that it should read, and that's what the thumbnail is for. So just to compare, it's always a good idea to kind of put that over here, to kind of, when you glance at this, so this is what it's helpful for, because it's smaller but it reads, and that's how you know you can develop that. And if it doesn't read, then you don't go beyond how quickly. I mean, this takes like maybe 5 minutes. Like this only takes a minute to come up with different thumbnails, and then when you sketch it out to kind of get like a value and like the scene and everything, and just like the feel of it. If you're not happy with this part, just like I'm not gonna draw like these until I develop them more. It's just like these are just notes. But like if I have this, I could develop that into something. And so that's what I'm doing here. And so I like it because it reads. Like when you zoom out, like if you were on the computer, I like to have sort of the zoomed out. Um, and then when you go in, again, it depends on like how you want to render it. This is just like the style that I'm choosing to go with. It can look very different. Like this, the illustration can look quite different because of the color and everything. However, I don't want to color over like that highlight that I had, because the sharpest highlights, or the highlights, like the brightest highlights, which is what a highlight is going to come from like the white of the paper, just because of the technique I'm using. But yeah, as long as it still has like the same like vibe, or it reads the same way. Because even in like the small sketch, there's things that are nice about it. Like I like the movement, I like the volume, and the values are good. So that's another thing, is to, and that's what's cool about printing out. Just do like a lighter version, but like print it out, because you have the values right here. So you're going to go darker than this light brown color, so you can kind of start to like shade in the figure, for example, because it's already shaded. So I can start to like do some of this, but be gradual about it, because that's how you keep it from being overworked, is by gradually rendering it. You can, and doing it in like steps and layers and stuff, you can keep it from looking overworked. So like, for example, the drawing is already there. Like I don't have to overwork the drawing. Like I don't have to, like I'm really not redrawing it. You'll notice I'm just rendering it. The drawing is already in place, like the way, the composition and the way it looks. But notice as I'm being kind of loose about this, the character starts to come through. Like this will look like a better, hopefully like a better version of the sketch. But if you're sketching, it's good to be loose about it. There's no reason to like tightly sketch, because that's, I guess that's not really like, that's not really sketching. Now you can be tight and render it, and the line can look sketchy, and that could still be your final. But when you're sketching, it's good to approach it in a pretty loose manner, and just keep working on this part, like the sketch, in other words, until it basically kind of just gets to kind of paints itself, so to speak. Well, one thing before I sign off for today is I find it, just artistically speaking, kind of tragic if I see someone have a sketch like this, and I see this and I think, okay, yeah, that's pretty cool, and I can see that they can draw and they can sketch and stuff, but then go to, and this has happened to me too, and this has to do with being like experience, basically, like being intermediate or like advanced and stuff. And this was something, yeah, like I had to go through myself. But to go from like the sketch and not have a good like finished piece, so either someone might have drawn like a big version and then colored it and it doesn't look good, so there's that. Or it might look pretty, but like the drawing is weak, which is what this is for, to have a stronger drawing or composition. Or this looks very different from this, which is okay if that was the intention. So that's what I was saying about if I were doing a completely different kind of medium, like watercolor or oil painting or whatever, or even acrylic, and I was going to be very painterly with it, then I wouldn't try to redraw this. I would just use this as the composition. So the main thing is I would think about the values and like the composition, but I know like the rendering would look different. This one I'm going for more of a illustration, if you want to call it that, but like basically just going off, basically coloring it, but maybe being a little bit more painterly about it, although I'm using markers. So yeah, hopefully some of that made sense. Now you can get some detail just by like just using the same marker. So that's 10 minutes, and I'm gonna kind of wrap this up. So that's why I also say to just stick with like this part, the sketching part, because you can start to get more detail, but you won't be thrown off by the value or like the color, because if you go to start to detail it too much, you won't be able to like go back. There's no undo here. It's just go forward. So you want to go forward pretty methodically and step by step, and at least this way you'll still have your drawing. And like if some stuff kind of gets thrown off, you can at least go in with like a second color and start to fix some things or refine some things, and then once you start to really see like some parts that but this would be like detail, so you can use a smaller pen, but that's like the detail stage. So this was the sketch, and then maybe the next thing would be like shading, which is figuring out, and part of that is just kind of looking at some reference if you want, or maybe sometimes you can kind of like see, because as you're sketching like this, you might start to see like the lighting situation. But usually it's good to kind of look at reference for lighting, because there's a lot of things you're not gonna, a lot of details you're not gonna be able to remember. So for example, like in the snake documentary I'm talking about, so you can get like some interesting light patterns. But that's like the shading part, which maybe I'll keep working on this stage, and I might get to the shading, and I usually will like later on in the day, but then but the main thing is to not rush it. And this is something that I also, where you're trying to like force it. If you don't see it, then just leave it. Like if it's not pretty obvious like what you're gonna do, then I would just let it sit. And it'll go quickly, and even if it doesn't go quickly, it's always nicer to be able to keep going forward successfully rather than having to like fix stuff, which is never that fun. But yeah, hopefully that was helpful to you. I want to thank you for joining me for our daily sketching routine, and if you like these videos, please support the channel. I appreciate it. I want to keep doing this going forward. So yeah, until next time, keep on sketching.